My name is Walter Greaves, and I turned 68 last fall. I've lived in the same modest two-bedroom home in Riverside, Ohio, for over 30 years, raised a family in it, fixed every broken pipe with my own two hands, and buried two beloved dogs under the oak tree in the backyard. My wife, Janice, passed 10 years ago, and since then, it's just been me and the memories. I'm not wealthy. I worked 40 years as a school bus mechanic, saved every dime I could, and lived a quiet life. My joy was my son, Derek. I loved that boy more than my own life. I taught him how to ride a bike, how to patch up scraped knees, how to change a tire. I worked overtime to pay for his college, sold my fishing boat so he could afford his first car. And then, somehow, I became a burden. It started subtle. Derek and his wife, Tina, began visiting less. When they did come by, Tina would look around the house like she was inspecting a dying thing. "This place smells like old books," she once said, wrinkling her nose. Derek just laughed. Then came the pressure. "Dad, you should think about selling," Derek suggested over dinner one Sunday. "Move into a place with some help. A facility, maybe. Somewhere safe." Safe. That word stung like a slap. I was still mowing my own lawn, but I said nothing. I just smiled, nodded, and poured him another cup of coffee. Then, last night, as rain tapped softly against my window, I got a message from my 13-year-old grandson, Caleb. "Grandpa, I just heard Mom and Dad talking in the kitchen. They're moving you out tonight. They said they're bringing a truck. Please don't tell them I told you." I sat frozen, the message glowing on my old flip phone. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum of war. I looked around my living room. The recliner Janice used to sit in, the old wooden clock that chimed off-key, the photos of my family smiling at birthdays and graduations. They were going to take it all, strip me of my home like I was some worn-out piece of furniture. And they hadn't even told me. I stood up slowly, the ache in my knees a reminder of the years I had lived, worked, and loved under this roof. I walked to the window and pulled the curtain back just an inch. The driveway was empty for now, but night was falling, and they were coming. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I sat by the window like a man waiting for a storm that already knew his name. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like something heavy was coming. Caleb's message replayed in my mind like an echo I couldn't shut off. I thought about everything in that house, not just the furniture and the photos, but the life sewn into the walls. This wasn't just where I lived. This was where I became a husband, a father, where Janice and I built a home with our bare hands and a whole lot of prayer. And now my own son wanted to drag me out like a sack of laundry. I leaned forward in the recliner, my fingers clasped so tight my knuckles cracked. How the hell did we get here? What did I do so wrong that my boy, the one I gave everything to, could look me in the eye one day and then plan behind my back the next? I didn't just raise him. I poured every bit of me into that kid. Derek was a quiet baby, born 2 weeks early during a snowstorm so bad I thought we'd never make it to the hospital. But we did, and when they placed him in my arms, I swear something cracked open in me. I looked down at that tiny face and made a silent promise. I'll protect you, no matter what. I kept that promise. At least I tried. He was my shadow for most of his childhood. I taught him how to tie his shoes, ride a bike, catch a fly ball, and talk to girls without turning beet red. I remember the summer we built a tree house in the backyard together. It took us 2 weeks, a bruised thumb, and more splinters than I care to count. But when we were done, Derek climbed up and yelled like he'd just built the Empire State Building. I worked overtime every chance I got, so he'd never go without. I gave up my dream of opening a garage and stayed at that school bus depot for 40 years. 40 years, just so my son could have something better. I still remember when he asked for a computer in middle school. Money was tight back then, tighter than I ever let him know. So I sold my fishing boat, the one thing I kept for myself. It killed me to do it, but when I saw the look on his face when he unwrapped that box, I'd have sold the house next if it meant keeping that light in his eyes. When he got accepted into college on state, I cried. Not because he was leaving, but because I was proud and worried. We couldn't afford it. Not really. But I cashed out a piece of my pension and picked up late shifts cleaning tools at the garage. I used to come home, so tired I couldn't even take my boots off without groaning. But I never told him. I didn't want him to worry. I wanted him to fly. And he did, at least for a while. The boy who came back wasn't the same one I sent off with hugs and pack sandwiches. He walked faster, talked sharper, laughed less. He started talking about optimizing resources and getting ahead, things I never taught him to care about. Then came Tina. She was polished, no doubt, wore perfume that made the whole house smell like a department store. From the start, she looked at my home like it was a fixer-upper project she didn't have time for. First time she stepped in, she sniffed and said, "It's cozy." Cozy. That's rich. Janice tried. God bless her. She tried to make that girl feel welcome. But Tina never looked comfortable unless she was in control. Derek followed her lead without question. I told myself they were just young and trying to figure things out. After Janice passed, the visits slowed. Then came the suggestions. Maybe it's time to downsize, Dad. You could get a condo near the city, less to clean. There's a really nice retirement community with a shuttle and a pool. Each time, I smiled, nodded, and said I'd think about it. I never did. Truth is, this house is all I've got. It's where I still hear Janice's voice when the wind slips through the window screens, where her scent lingers on that scarf in the closet, where Caleb and I sit on the porch eating peanuts and watching squirrels like it's the best show on earth. And now, Derek wants to rip me out of it like I'm some expired tenant in his master plan. He didn't even tell me to my face. No phone call, no letter, not even a heads-up text. Just a quiet little plan behind closed doors, sealed with moving boxes and loaded into a truck. If it wasn't for Caleb, God, that boy, 13 and already more of a man than his father's been in years. He listens. He notices things. When I cough, he asks if I've had water. When I limp, he offers to get me ice. That kid loves me, and I love him right back. I think that's what makes this hurt more. Not that I'm being tossed out, but that the boy I raised, the one I taught everything I knew, could forget all of it. All those years, all those sacrifices. What did I do wrong? I got up from the recliner and walked down the hall to the closet. Behind an old coat and Janice's winter shawl sat a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside was a small black pouch holding a set of keys, storage unit keys. A decade ago, I put all the precious things in there. Things they didn't even know existed. They weren't getting that either. I may be old, but I'm not broken. And I'm damn sure not stupid. They want to treat me like some forgotten relic? Like I didn't raise them, feed them, bleed for them? Let them come. I won't be waiting with a smile. I'll be ready with the truth. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. I could feel it in my chest, like a countdown. I sat in my recliner, facing the front door, the porch light casting a soft yellow glow on the living room rug. The house smelled like rain, old leather, and something else I couldn't name. Maybe pride. Maybe grief. Maybe both. Then I heard it, the low rumble of tires pulling into the driveway. I didn't move, just listened. The crunch of gravel. A door slammed. Then another. A second vehicle behind them. A truck bigger than anything I'd seen parked outside my house in years. I could hear voices, muffled, rushed, hushed like they were sneaking up on a sleeping dog they didn't want to wake. But I was already wide awake. 3 knocks on the door. Sharp, businesslike. I stayed quiet. Then his voice. "Dad, it's me. Derek." I stood up slowly, knees cracking, my hand resting lightly on the doorknob. But I didn't open it. I wanted to hear how far they go before they even looked me in the eye. "We're just here to help," he said. "Just let us in. We've already made the arrangements." Arrangements? Like I was a piece of furniture being picked up and hauled to a storage facility. Tina's voice cut in next. "The movers are paid by the hour. Let's not drag this out." I opened the door. Not all the way. Just enough for them to see my face. Tina's eyes darted to mine, then quickly down, like she was caught doing something she knew was wrong. Derek gave a half smile. The kind you were when you know you've done something shameful, but you're hoping to sell it anyway. "Hey, Dad," he said like it was just another Sunday visit. I opened the door fully and stepped out onto the porch. I could feel the cold night air on my skin, but I didn't flinch. Tina looked behind me. "We'll be quick. We've got boxes and tape in the car." I made a list of what to bring. What to bring where? I asked, my voice low. She blinked like I'd spoken another language. "To Sunny Oaks, of course. The senior center." I nodded slowly. "You sign me up for a home." Derek raised his hands like he was explaining to a stubborn child. "It's a retirement residence. You'll have a private room, your own window, It's got bingo nights, a doctor on site. I'm not sick. No, but I'm not senile. No one said you were. You just made plans to move me out of my house without asking. Dad, we've talked about this. No, I said. You talked. I listened. And then you went behind my back. Tina stepped forward. Look, it's already done. We're here now. Let's just get started. I stepped in front of the door and locked it behind me. You're not coming inside, I said. She blinked again. Excuse me? You heard me. Derek's voice dropped an octave. Dad, don't be difficult. I'm not being difficult. I'm being clear. This is my house. Bought and paid for with my money. I raised you in it. I buried my wife from it. I've lived more life in these walls than you've probably lived in your whole marriage. Tina crossed her arms. You're being emotional. You're damn right I am. Behind them, the two movers stood by the truck, awkward as scarecrows, unsure whether to move or wait for a green light. You brought strangers to pack up my life, I said, shaking my head. And you didn't even call me first. Derek's jaw tightened. We didn't think you'd understand. No, you didn't think I'd fight. I pulled out a small envelope from my pocket and handed it to him. He took it, opened it with fumbling fingers, and his eyes darted over the first few lines before they stopped. What is this? He asked. My updated will. Tina stepped closer. You changed your will? I did. The house goes to Caleb. Their mouths fell open in unison. To Caleb. Tina's voice shot up an octave. He's a child. He's more of a man than either of you. Derek tried to argue, but I raised a hand. He's the only one in this family who's looked out for me. The only one who had the decency to tell me the truth. He warned me. Your son had to warn me. Derek looked away, like the truth burned his skin. I don't need you to agree, I said. You already made your choice when you brought a truck instead of a conversation. Tina turned to the movers and waved them forward. Go ahead. Start with the living room. They hesitated, looking at Derek. He nodded. I stepped off the porch, right in front of them. If you touch anything in my home, I said slowly, you'll be trespassing. One of the movers shifted his feet. Sir, we were just hired to. You weren't hired by me. They backed away. Tina looked furious. This is insane. You're not thinking clearly. No, I'm finally thinking clearly. For the first time in years. I turned to Derek. Do you remember the treehouse? He blinked. What? The one we built. You were 7. You dropped the hammer 3 times, but you wouldn't quit. You begged me to keep going until it was done. And when we nailed the last plank, you looked at me like I was a hero. He said nothing. I've been building things my whole life. Homes, trust, family. And I won't let either of you tear it down just because I've got a few gray hairs. Tina grabbed Derek's arm. Let's go. This is a waste of time. They started walking toward the car. The movers followed behind. Before Derek climbed into the passenger seat, he looked back at me. I didn't say anything. I just held his gaze long enough for him to look away. When they drove off, I stood on the porch until the red taillights disappeared down the road. Only then did I go back inside. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I locked the door behind me and turned off the porch light. Then I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at the table with my hands folded. They thought they could uproot me like a weed. But I'm not a weed. I'm the soil, and they forgot what grows from it. The morning after they tried to move me out like an old rug, the sun rose too bright for my taste. I didn't sleep much. A few minutes here and there. My body rested, but my mind was spinning like an engine that wouldn't shut off. I brewed a pot of black coffee. No sugar, the way Janice used to hate. You drink that stuff like it's punishment, she used to say, wagging a finger at me. I'd give anything to hear her voice again, but all I had now was silence. And that silence was beginning to feel like fuel. I stood in the kitchen watching the steam rise from my mug and thought about what came next. They were going to come back. Derek wasn't going to let this go. Not now that he realized Caleb was in the middle of it. And Tina, well, I knew people like her. Always scheming. Always waiting for you to get tired so they can grab what you built when your hands go slack. But I wasn't tired. Not anymore. After breakfast, I pulled out a pen and a legal pad from the drawer and started writing everything down. Names, numbers, the address of the storage unit, what's inside, my banking details, my passwords, all the things I'd kept in my head out of habit, now written down with intention. This wasn't about holding on anymore. It was about handing something down the right way. Caleb came by in the afternoon, riding his bike with one hand and holding a bag of trail mix in the other. I heard the tires crunch on the driveway and met him at the door before he could knock. He looked up at me, nervous. "You okay, Grandpa?" I nodded and stepped aside. "Come in, son." He walked in and glanced around like he expected the house to be emptier than it was. They didn't take anything. They didn't take what wasn't theirs. He followed me into the kitchen, set the bag of trail mix on the table, and sat across from me. I could see it all over his face. He was scared, not of me, but of what this might do to his parents. "Did they yell at you?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, but they were angry and embarrassed." He looked down at his hands. "They're gonna blame me. Let them. You did what was right. I'll take the blame. That's what grandfathers are for." He smiled, but it was small. His heart was too big for a boy's age. Too much weight on it. I'd give anything to lift that weight off him. I pulled out the legal pad and showed him the first few pages. "This is my legacy. I'm writing it down so no one can twist it around later." He scanned it, eyes wide. "You're really giving me the house?" "I'm not just giving you a house. I'm giving you a lesson. That family is supposed to protect each other, not steal from each other when their backs are turned." His hands shook a little as he took the pages. "What if Dad tries to change your mind?" I leaned forward. He already had his chance. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about Janice, about the old days, about where he wants to go when he grows up. He said he wanted to be an architect, build places that feel like home. "You've already got the heart for it," I said. "The hands will follow." When he left, I called my old friend Harold from the VFW. He wasn't just a buddy from the war. He'd gone on to become a real estate attorney. Retired now, mostly, but still sharp. He answered on the second ring. "Walt, that you? Thought you died years ago." "Not yet, Harry. And I need a favor." He chuckled. "That's how I know you're still breathing." I told him everything. What Dare tried to do. The new will. Caleb. Harry didn't say much, just listened. Then he said, "Give me the documents. I'll make sure they're locked down. Power of attorney, transfer deed, the works." "You sure?" "Damn right. You were the best shot in our platoon. I owe you more than this." I thanked him and hung up. I felt lighter already. That night, I took a walk around the backyard. The air was still, crickets humming in the grass. I stopped beneath the oak tree where Janice and I had buried our old golden retriever, Lucky. Caleb helped me dig the hole when he was 9, tears rolling down his cheeks like he'd lost a brother. I stood there for a long time, hand resting on the tree trunk, and whispered something only Janice could hear. "I'm fixing it, hon. I'm making sure they don't burn down what we built." The next day, I drove out to the storage unit. Dusty, quiet, forgotten by most people. But not by me. I opened the door and stepped inside. There they were, our memories. The old photo albums. Janice's embroidered pillows. The silverware we got for our wedding. The coin collection. The army medals. The first blanket we wrapped Derek in. I took a few boxes and loaded them into the back of my truck. The rest would stay locked away. Safe. Far from greedy hands and forgotten gratitude. At the diner on the way home, I saw Tina. She didn't see me right away. She was in a booth with a woman I didn't recognize. Dressed sharp, hair tied back, talking fast. I slowed down just enough to hear her say, "If we can get the house transferred before the probate locks in, we'll have equity to leverage for the business loan. The old man's being stubborn, but it's just a matter of time." She laughed. I turned and walked out before she saw me. So that was the plan all along. I thought it was about safety, about concern, about aging with dignity. It wasn't. It was about money. Tina never cared about legacy. She cared about leverage. That night, I sat on the porch with a notepad and wrote a letter. Not to Derek, not to Tina, but to Caleb. I wrote everything. What I'd seen, what I'd heard, why I made the decisions I did. I signed it with shaking hands, folded it 3 times, and tucked it into the envelope with the new will. Then I sealed it. If they wanted a war, I wouldn't fight with fists. I'd fight with paper, with planning, with love handed forward like a torch. Let Derek chase his investments. Let Tina scheme with her bankers. I had something they'd never have again. The truth on my side, and a grandson worth protecting. The envelope with Caleb's name on it sat by the lamp for 2 days before I made the decision to give it to him. I kept looking at it like it was a grenade with the pin halfway out. I wanted to protect him, but protection meant truth now, not hiding. If I didn't prepare that boy, I'd be leaving him exposed to people who wore family titles but had hearts made of ice. He came by after school on Thursday. No bike this time, just a backpack that looked too heavy and eyes that looked tired. I knew something was wrong before he even said a word. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, dropping his bag by the door. His voice had a wobble in it, the kind you get when you're trying real hard not to let something leak out of you. I motioned to the chair at the table. "Come sit." He sat, pulled out a pack of gum, and started unwrapping a piece just to keep his hands busy. "They're mad at me," he finally said. I nodded slowly. "Your folks?" He looked down. "They saw the text I sent you. Mom went through my phone. Said I betrayed them. Said I was too young to understand grown-up decisions." I clenched my jaw. "And your dad?" He didn't yell, but he didn't stop her either. I reached over and slid the sealed envelope across the table toward him. "That's for you." He looked at it like it might burn his fingers. "What is it?" "Something you'll need one day. Not now, not tomorrow, but if things keep going the way I think they will, you'll need to know what I'm fighting for." He nodded but didn't touch it yet. I could see the conflict in his eyes. Loyalty has a price, and they were making him pay it early. That boy was only 13, but they were trying to make him pick sides like he was a grown man in a courtroom. "I didn't mean to cause problems," he said softly. "You didn't," I replied. "They did. You just shine a light on it." He looked up. "I just didn't want them to hurt you. And now they're hurting you." He shrugged, but I saw it. That pain, that confusion, that ache a child feels when the people they're supposed to trust act like strangers in the dark. "I'm not going to stop talking to you," he said suddenly, "even if they say I have to." I nodded, my chest tightening with pride and guilt at the same time. "You're a good boy, Caleb, but I want you to be smart too. This isn't your war." He looked at me, serious. "But it kind of is, isn't it?" I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. That night after he left, I sat on the porch and watched the street until the last car passed. The last porch light dimmed, and all the houses on my block turned into silhouettes. I thought about the time I first brought Derek home from the hospital. How tiny he was in that car seat. How I'd driven 15 miles under the speed limit just to make sure we didn't hit a bump too hard. I remember Janice laughing, telling me I was acting like I had gold in the back seat. I did. I just didn't know how easily gold could turn to rust when it's not cared for. The next day, I got a knock on the door around noon. I opened it, and there he was, Derek. No Tina this time. No moving truck. Just him. Alone. Wearing his fancy office shirt like armor. "Dad," he said, "can we talk?" I stepped aside and let him in. He looked around like he was checking for hidden cameras. He sat on the edge of the couch like he didn't want to sink into it. "I came to apologize," he began. I waited. "Not for everything," he added quickly. "Just for how we did it. We should have told you. I see that now. You did more than not tell me," I said. "You planned my removal." He sighed and rubbed his face. "Look, Tina, she just wants what's best. For you. For us. We're stretched thin. We're trying to start a business. We figured this place could help." There it is. I cut in. "The truth." He paused. I leaned forward. "You didn't do it out of love. You did it because you saw an opportunity. You thought I was too old, too soft, too sentimental to notice. That's not fair, isn't it?" He stood. "Caleb's been acting out. He's questioning us, shutting us out. Tina blames you." I stood too. "Don't put that boy in the middle of your mess. He's trying to understand why the people who raised him are tearing apart the man who raised them. He's 13, Dad. He doesn't get it. Neither do you," I said. "And you're 42. He glared at me, then shook his head. "Fine, you win. Keep the house. But don't poison my son against me. I didn't have to. You did that all by yourself." He left without another word. No hug, no handshake, just the sound of the screen door slapping shut behind him. The silence afterward was heavier than usual. It felt like something had cracked that couldn't be glued back together. I looked over at the table where Caleb's envelope used to be. It was gone now, tucked safely into his school binder. I knew he'd keep it hidden. He was smart that way. But now he was carrying something heavier than paper. He was carrying the weight of knowing his parents could betray someone they once loved. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how a man could pour his life into something only to watch it rot from the inside. And yet, in all that rot, Caleb shined like a clean nail in a box of rusted ones. They could scream, they could scheme, but I wasn't giving up. I'd spent too many years building this life with care, sweat, and honest hands. If they wanted to rip it apart, they were going to have to face me. And if they ever tried to touch that boy, not just with anger, but with guilt, with control, they'd find out just how strong an old man can be when his back's against the wall and the only thing left to protect is someone who still believes in him. It started with a bruise, a small one, barely the size of a quarter, just above Caleb's elbow. I saw it when he reached across the table to grab the salt during one of our usual dinners. He pulled his sleeve down quick, like he was used to hiding it. That alone told me everything I needed to know. I didn't ask, not yet. I waited. 2 days later, he came back with a scratch on his neck. Then silence. That kind of silence that builds walls around a child and dares you to knock them down. "I'm clumsy," he mumbled when I asked. "Ran into the fence." But Caleb never ran into fences. That boy could zigzag through a pile of junk like a cat in a junkyard. What he couldn't do was lie. Not well, anyway. He kept fiddling with the hem of his shirt, wouldn't meet my eyes. That night, I sat in the dark for hours. The TV was on, but I wasn't watching it. My hand rested on the armrest of my chair, twitching, itching to make a move I didn't want to make. Because the truth was simple and cruel. I was running out of time to protect that boy, and I might be the only one left who could. The next morning, I called Harold again. He picked up on the second ring like he always did. "That bad, huh?" "It's worse than I thought." I explained the bruises, the tension, the change in Caleb's voice. I didn't have proof, not yet, but sometimes when you've been a father long enough, you don't need evidence. You can smell pain the same way you smell rain coming through cracked windows. Harold didn't hesitate. "Let's talk guardianship." I blinked. He's got parents. Maybe not the kind he needs. I swallowed hard. I'd raised Derek with the idea that being a man meant protecting the weak. And now here I was, watching him shrink under Tina's shadow, letting her run that house like a ship built on shame and control. He wasn't protecting his son anymore. And if he wasn't going to step up, I would. Harold made the paperwork simple. A petition for emergency guardianship if the situation escalated. I'd have to report any harm I suspected, maybe involve Child Protective Services if it came to that. But I didn't care about the storm. Not anymore. I cared about Caleb. The real fight was no longer about the house. It was about him. Later that week, Caleb didn't show up at all. I waited on the porch until the streetlights buzzed on. He never missed our visits. Not even in the rain. Not even when he had homework or chores. Something was wrong. So I called the house. Tina answered. Her voice was cool, clipped, like I was a solicitor. "Caleb's grounded," she said. "He won't be coming over for a while." "For how long?" "Until he learns boundaries." "What boundaries?" "You don't need to know that," she snapped. "You've interfered enough." And then, just before she hung up, I heard something in the background. A door slamming, something crashing, and a voice, Caleb's, raised, cracking. I stood up from the recliner, so fast my knees popped. I almost grabbed the keys and drove over, but I forced myself to stop. I didn't want to make it worse for him by storming in unannounced. Instead, I called Harold again and told him everything I'd just heard. He told me to document everything. Dates, times, words. Then he gave me the number of a social worker he trusted. "I hate this crap, Walt," he muttered. "But you can't go over there and snatch him up. Not yet. You'll get arrested, and they'll call you unstable. I'd rather be arrested than bury that boy. You won't have to. Just follow my lead." 2 days later, I filed my first report. Nothing dramatic. Just concern. Verbal abuse. Physical signs of harm. Denied visitation. It was enough to open a file. Enough to put them on a list they never expected to be on. That same evening, Caleb snuck over. He showed up at my back door, hoodie pulled tight, eyes red. I let him in and wrapped my arms around him before he even said a word. "They took my phone," he whispered. "Of course they did. They said you're turning me against them. They're just scared of the truth." He pulled out a small, folded paper from his sock. I copied the business plan, the one they're trying to use the house for. I unfolded it, my hand shaking. A line of credit, signed projections, They'd planned to use the house as collateral to fund a second location for a salon Tina wanted to open in Dallas. Risky, uninsured, rushed. They were willing to gamble with my life's work and risk losing everything if it didn't work out. Why are they doing this? Caleb asked, his voice breaking. Because they've forgotten what love looks like, I said. And people who forget love start thinking ownership is the same thing as family. The next day, I filed the full emergency petition for guardianship. It felt like turning a key I never wanted to touch, like crossing a line from grandparent to parent again. But I didn't flinch. I couldn't afford to. That afternoon, I had my locks changed. Not because I feared another truck, but because this time, I feared their desperation. Tina and Derek were smart, but scared. Scare people do reckless things. If they caught wind of what I was planning, they'd either run with Caleb or try to bury me in lies. But it was too late for that. The foundation was set. The papers were filed, and the fire they lit in me hadn't gone out. That night, I opened Janice's old Bible. It had been years since I touched it. Inside was a small photo, one I'd forgotten existed. It was me and Derek, both covered in dirt, holding up a tiny plant we just buried together in the yard. His smile was pure. My arm was wrapped around his shoulders. Janice had taken the photo and written one word on the back. Roots. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't fail as a father. He just forgot where he came from. But Caleb still remembered. And for him, I was gonna fight until my last breath. I didn't have to be told when they got the papers. I felt it, like a shift in the wind just before a storm. It was late afternoon when I heard the tires screech outside my house. I was sitting by the window, peeling an apple with my pocket knife, when I saw Tina's SUV pull up like it had something to prove. Derek stepped out on the passenger side, shoulders stiff, eyes locked on my front door like it had insulted his pride. I didn't move. Let them come. Let them scream. I had nothing to hide anymore. The door slammed open before I could even reach the knob. Tina marched in first, holding the guardianship papers like they were on fire. Derek followed behind her, not saying a word. I could see it on his face, guilt mixed with fear. But Tina? No, she was running on something else. Anger, panic, pride. You filed for custody of my son, she spat. I didn't answer right away. I just took my time, setting the apple and knife down on the table. Then I looked her dead in the eye. I filed to protect Caleb. From us, she barked. Yes. Derek finally found his voice. Dad, you've gone too far. I haven't gone far enough. Tina waved the papers in my face. This is a joke. You think a court's going to hand over a kid to a 70-year-old man with a bad hip and no income? I think the court's going to listen to what that boy has been through. She stepped closer. Too close. Let me make this clear, she hissed. You're not taking my son from me. You are not destroying this family. I laughed, soft and sad. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending we weren't already broken. Her mouth snapped shut for a moment. The insult landed, right in her pride. You don't know what's best for him, she said, quieter now. You're old. He needs structure. He needs modern parenting. You mean silence? Fear, grounding him for loving his grandfather. You manipulated him, she barked. No, I'll listen to him. You should try it sometime. Derek stepped forward. Dad, please. Let's just talk. No courts. No lawyers. We can work this out. We had a chance to talk, I interrupted. That ended when you tried to throw me out of my house without asking. When you shut your son out for telling me the truth. You made this mess. Now you want to sweep it up with handshakes and promises. Tina looked like she might explode. She grabbed Derek's arm. We're leaving. This is insanity. But Derek didn't move right away. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Something old. Something I hadn't seen since he was a boy building a treehouse with his bare hands and my old hammer. Derek, I said, voice soft, you still have a chance to make this right. He looked down at the papers Tina had crumpled in her hand, then back at me. I don't know who to protect anymore, he whispered. Tina jerked his arm. We're going. They stormed out without another word. I didn't celebrate. I didn't exhale. Not yet. Because that visit wasn't the end. It was the start of the war. The very next morning, I got a call from Caleb's school. He hadn't shown up. No warning. No excuse. I felt a cold panic in my chest. I drove straight to their house. No answer. Curtains drawn. Mail still in the box. Gone. Just like that. I reported it to Harold, then to the social worker handling the case. They started the process. Missing minor, likely parental flight to avoid guardianship review. It triggered a legal freeze. But that didn't make it easier to sleep. 2 days passed. Then 3. And on the 4th day, there was a knock at the back door. I opened it, and there he was, Caleb, disheveled, pale, backpack slung over one shoulder like it was filled with bricks. He stepped in fast and closed the door behind him. I ran, he said, chest heaving. I ran away. I hugged him before I asked a single question. He collapsed into my arms and cried. Not like a kid, but like someone who'd been holding it in too long. They were packing, he whispered. Said we were moving. No school. No friends. Just disappearing. You did the right thing. I whispered into his hair. You're safe now. And I meant it. Because now it wasn't just about protecting Caleb. It was about standing my ground and showing him that love doesn't run. Love stays. I didn't sleep the night Caleb ran to me. Not a wink. He was curled up in the guest room, wrapped in the same quilt Janice had made years ago. The one she used to say was stitched with more love than thread. I stood outside his door most of the night, just listening to the sound of his breath, making sure it stayed steady, because I'd spent too many nights lately wondering if that boy was safe. And now, I wasn't wondering. Now, I was watching. The next morning, I called Harold. They're on the run, I told him. But Caleb's with me. Harold didn't waste time. Bring him down to the courthouse today. We'll file for emergency protective custody. He paused, then added quietly, it's gonna get loud. I'm ready, but I wasn't sure Caleb was. So I sat with him over breakfast, just the two of us, plates of eggs growing cold between us. They're gonna ask you questions, I said, and they're going to expect you to tell the truth. He nodded, eyes staring into his orange juice like it held all the answers. You can say as much or as little as you want, I added. But don't lie. Not to protect them. Not to protect me. I'm not scared, he whispered. I just don't want anyone to hate me. I reached across the table and held his hand. Speaking the truth doesn't make people hate you. It shows them who they really are. He squeezed my fingers and nodded again, this time with something firmer behind his eyes. Something like strength. The courthouse was cold. Not in temperature, but in feeling. The kind of cold you feel in your gut. Long halls, beige walls, people moving like ghosts with clipboards and tired eyes. Harold met us outside the juvenile court office. He looked sharp, dark coat, briefcase in one hand, file in the other. He smiled at Caleb, but it was the kind of smile adults wear when they know what's coming and wish they could shield you from it. You sure you're up for this, young man? He asked. Caleb nodded. I have to be. We filed the motion. The judge, a tall woman with silver hair and a voice like steel wrapped in velvet, heard us that afternoon. I watched as Caleb sat there beside me, back straight, legs still swinging above the floor like the child he still was, but with the eyes of someone who'd lived a little too much too fast. He told the truth. About the bruises, the yelling, the threats, how his phone was taken, how he was told to lie to teachers and friends, how his parents told him I was manipulating him when all I did was listen. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The judge listened closely, took notes, looked at Caleb the way a mother might look at a hurt child who still wants to be brave. Then she turned to me. Mr. Harris, you understand the responsibility you're requesting? I met her gaze. I raised one son already. I've still got more love left in me. I can do this. She nodded. Until the full custody hearing, Caleb will remain in your care. And I'm ordering both parents to attend a review meeting with family services next week. Harold grinned. Caleb looked at me like I just caught him falling from a cliff. But it wasn't victory. Not yet. Because the next day, Derek came back. He didn't knock. He waited outside by the fence. Arms crossed. Eyes shadowed by something I hadn't seen in a long time, shame. I walked out, stood on the porch, and waited for him to speak. You won, he said finally. I shook my head. This wasn't a game. He looked down at his feet, then back at me. I didn't want to go this far. Tina said we were losing control. Control? I stepped forward. You weren't supposed to control that boy. You were supposed to raise him. He flinched. I don't know who you become, I said. But I know who you used to be. And that man would have torn the world apart for his son. What happened to him? He swallowed hard. I got tired. So did I said, but I never gave up. He looked away. They're calling us unfit now. There's an investigation. You earned it. He looked back at me then, and for a brief second, I saw something break. Tears welled in his eyes, but he blinked them away. Do you hate me? I let that question sit in the space between us like a wound. No, I said softly, but I'm disappointed. Deeply. He nodded, and then he said something I wasn't ready for. Thank you for taking care of him. I didn't reply. I just nodded and turned back toward the door. Inside, Caleb stood by the curtain, peeking out. He came, he asked. Yeah. What did he say? I knelt beside him. He said thank you. Caleb looked confused. Why? Because somewhere deep down, he knows he failed you. And maybe, just maybe, he wants to do better. Time will tell. Caleb nodded, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled, really smiled. And in that moment, I didn't feel like an old man fighting time. I felt like a grandfather giving a boy back his future. The house felt different with Caleb here. Not quieter, just warmer. His laughter started to come back, slow and cautious like a bird learning to fly again. He'd spend hours sitting by the front window with a book in his lap, or helping me tend the backyard like Janice used to. Sometimes, he'd hum while sweeping the porch or picking up the mail. Just small signs. Signs that the weight he'd been carrying was beginning to lift. It didn't disappear overnight. Some nights, he'd still wake up crying. Sometimes he'd flinch when I raised my voice to call his name across the yard. But when I sat beside him and waited, not forcing, not fixing, he always came back to himself. I didn't try to erase what happened. I just made sure it didn't define him. Derek and Tina were ordered into parenting classes and supervised visits. Caleb didn't want to go at first, and I didn't push him. The judge gave us time. I used every minute of it to let him remember what safety felt like. That love wasn't loud. It was quiet, consistent, patient. One afternoon, he came out of his room holding the envelope I'd given him weeks before. Can I open it now? He asked. I nodded. He sat on the porch swing and peeled it open, slowly. Inside was the letter, my handwriting shaky but honest, and the new will. My final decision in ink and signature. He read the letter twice, then looked up at me with glassy eyes. You're really leaving all this to me? I nodded. Because you're the only one who understands what it took to build it. He leaned his head on my shoulder, and we sat like that for a long time. Not talking, just breathing. That night, I wrote one more letter. Not for lawyers, not for courts, not even for Caleb. It was for Derek. I didn't write it to shame him. I wrote it to remind him who he used to be. Son, I began, I don't hate you. I just miss the man you once were. The boy who cried when his mama broke her arm. The teenager who used to sneak food to stray dogs behind the church. The young man who swore he'd never become cold. I hope one day you find that boy again. I sealed it and left it on his porch without a name. He'd know. The court finalized it a few weeks later. Caleb was legally under my guardianship. No more back and forth. No more visits filled with tears or dread. Just a home where he could breathe again. Derek didn't contest it. Maybe he knew he'd already lost something deeper than custody. Maybe my letter hit something buried too long. Or maybe, just maybe, he was finally tired of fighting the wrong war. He sent a message through Harold. Tell him I'm working on it. I didn't write back. Some things are better proven in actions, not words. Caleb came home from school one afternoon with paint on his hands. I started designing something, he said. He unrolled a sketch on the table. A small cabin with big windows and a garden in the back. It's not just a house. It's a place people can go when they need to feel safe. I want to build places like this one day. I looked at him, my throat tight. You already are, I said. He smiled, wider than I'd seen in months. I'm going to call it the Harris House. After you and Grandma. I looked at that paper like it was the final chapter one didn't know I was waiting for. Because it was never about the walls we live in. It was about what we passed down through. One morning, Caleb was already in the kitchen making pancakes before I even got out of bed. You rest, he called. I've got it today. And just like that, I knew my work was done. I may not live to see the first Harris house built. I may not be around when Caleb walks into his future with strong legs and a healed heart. But I'll be there in the way he walks, in the way he treats people, in the way he remembers where he came from. Because I didn't raise a child. I raised a man who broke the cycle. And that, more than anything, is the legacy I leave behind.